There's two issues here, and I'll try to be as kind of objective as possible with it and not let my own personal feelings interfere with this very subjective change. Uh, so the first change was to a playstyle as a whole. They mentioned if we go back to how they were redesigning Mistweavers and why they kind of removed fist weaving. They said they didn't like fist weaving because that it introduced a sub-spec to the spec and it was very difficult to balance. When in reality, the difficulty with Mistweavers and balancing it was pretty much all tied to Manatee and how that worked. If they had just removed Manatee from fist weaving, it would have been fine. Like they could have kept the whole, damage to healing conversion mechanic and there would have been no issues. The issues were Manatee. Anyway, they didn't like the sub spec within the spec. And what talents like Spirit of the Crane and Rising Thunder actually introduced was a new sub spec within the spec of fist weaving. You could basically spend most of your time just using Rising Sun Kick and, kind of relying on that to provide either free Vivifies or, double cooldown Renewing Mist. And it just created a completely different playstyle than, for example, specking for Manatee and Life Cycles, where it's mostly okay, just use Enveloping Mist and Vivify back and forth, or take Rushing Jade Wind and Essence Font, which is be very efficient until you have to use Rushing Jade Wind and Essence Font. So you had three very different playstyles within one spec, which is really, really exciting. And people were really excited about that, and it seemed like a lot of fun that you could change your playstyle based on the talents you took, which, as we talked about in the Brewmaster section, was kind of the point of talents, and it's hit or miss in some specs, but Mistweaver seemed to have it, and it was kind of a
Hmm.
shining light, at the end of the tunnel. But now we got these changes, and they do pretty much kill those ideas of the spec because, first of all, Rising Thunder as a playstyle was already kind of on level with the other playstyle, or it was even at times more expensive to play with lower throughput. And With the reduction on mana cost return from Spirit of the Crane and a 50% increase, I know it sounds bad, but 50% increase on the mana cost of Rising Sun Kick, up from 2% to 3% mana. That's a lot of mana to spend on damage, meaning not healing. It doesn't even do that much damage, especially when you compare it to other similar healer abilities. It just doesn't do that much damage, and for what you're getting out of it, for that much mana you're spending, it's not a whole lot. By comparison, let's say Vivify costs 4% mana, and now Rising Sun Kick costs 3%. So for you're basically only saving about 1% of mana on every Vivify when you could take the option of a Focus Thunder, not really a great option, or just a Manatee and save a lot more on it. So that's the one half of the problem with what they did. The second half was based pretty much entirely on Rising Sun Kick's mana cost increase. I don't know why they keep increasing the mana cost of healer spells. Like my argument before I saw Friday's testing was that they don't need to be these spells don't need to have mana costs. If a fight is significantly challenging enough for a healer to make every choice interesting, to make the choice between doing damage and doing healing interesting, then the fight just has to be really challenging for a healer. The fight just has to have a lot of healing to be done. That way, every global is a big decision. You have to decide: do I want to heal this person? Do I want to heal this person? Do I need to add some more damage? What can I? How can I strike that balance? And you don't need to consider mana to do that. What adding a huge and 3% may not sound like a lot, but it really is because we're very mana strained or mana stressed in this new environment. What this mana cost does is basically says, okay, in any fight where I'm challenged as a healer and my every global matters, I can't even consider these high cost damaging abilities. They're just not worth it to consider. Because first off, I'm trying to do as much healing as possible, and I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. These damaging abilities don't do any healing on their own, and now Rising Sun Kick really isn't that efficient. Um, just the math worked out before, where Rising Thunder was about as effective as Manatee, for example, and about as effective as Focus Thunder in saving you mana on, like, let's say, a Vivify cast. But now it's just not. It's just behind, and since it's not efficient anymore, it's kind of not a playstyle you really want to play. You can use it in dungeons, sure, and it's probably the best way to go for dungeons. And if that's the way you want to look at it, that's fine. But for a raiding monk who had a lot of perspective playstyles through either the normal baseline playstyle, which was enveloping Vivify, going back and forth, through the Rising Thunder playstyle, which is basically bringing back fist weaving, which I know a lot of people liked, or the kind of bursty play style through Russian Jade Wind and Essence Font. They had those choices, and now they kind of neutered them. And in the case of Russian Jade Wind, before it even saw the light of day, to the point where they're just really it's not worth using.
No,
The
with
problem
Russian
with the
Jade Wind, they did reduce the mana cost on that.
they did, but that's a problem because the big they so what they did was okay. Russian Jade Wind healed for some amount, and Essence Font healed for some amount, and you could cast them back to back anyway, right? And they did a bunch of healing for a bunch of mana. The change to Russian Jade Wind to allow I'm going to call it Russian Jade Wind because I can't convert.
Right.
It's so difficult for me. I've
RJW.
tried before, but yeah. So they wanted to add a healing increase to Essence Font when you cast Russian Jade Wind to kind of make it so that you could use it sort of rotationally, and it didn't just feel like these two buttons were competing with each other. But they didn't. It didn't really do anything because when you reduce the healing of Russian Jade Wind, which is a lot, uh, and then buff Essence Font healing by about the same amount, there's really a net change of zero between those two things. You just now you have to cast Essence Font after Russian Jade Wind rather than saying, "Oh, I can," and it'll be even better. It's there was no real change in healing between the previous version and this version. So it was kind of a pointless nerf to go along with it. Yeah, they reduced the mana cost, but the whole point of that kind of playstyle was that you didn't really care about your mana outside of that spending. You spent a whole bunch of mana, and you did it via Mana Tea, or you did it with Mana Tea, or you did it with an Innervate, or you did it during a Symbol of Hope, and so the mana cost was really irrelevant. What was really irrelevant was the vast amounts of healing it did, and it took a big hit with this, with that really preemptive nerf. Like they didn't even let the talent breathe for even one cycle before nerfing it. I don't know why they made that change to Russian Jade Wind. My The only thing I come up with was that maybe they wanted to make it more usable by monks who might not have access to Innervates, a symbol of hope, who might not want to take Mana Tea. But the way the talents are set up, uh, kind of forces that synergy between Mana Tea, Russian Jade Wind, and life cycles.
Yeah.
But
Hey, at least there's synergy.
we'll see.
That's an improvement.
Yeah,
So,
I suppose.
all right. Well, let's talk